Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of the House Committee on Finance. I hope it's finding everyone and your families and your friends safe. We have people here in studio, and we also have people who are at home. So, Clerk, if you please call the roll so we can get an attendance, please.
Chairman Abney,
Present.
Vice Chair Slater, Vice Chair Mazakowski.
Present.
Representative Amore,
Present.
Representative Baginski,
Present.
Representative Barros,
Present.
Representative Diaz,
Present.
Representative Edwards,
Present.
Representative Hull,
Present.
Representative Nardone, Representative Quattrucci, Representative O'Brien, Representative Ruggiero,
Present.
Representative Tabone, Representative Vella-Wilkinson. It doesn't work that way, but we have a quorum anyway.
I can vouch for her. She is here
All right, thanks.
somewhere. Okay. Okay, thank you, Clerk, for that, for the roll call.
Sure, no problem.
Tonight we have, I think, 3 or 4 bills that we have to vote out to the floor. And as you hear me say many times, when a bill is considered, it just simply means it's been heard before and it's been selected to go to the floor for further debate, because we don't do debate in the chambers here. So we'll do those bills first today. And then after that, we will hold all bills for further study. And then after that, we will have a guest who will help us out. As you know, we're in the middle of making sure that we understand the contract that we're starting to decide whether to enact or not. And it's always good to get more than one perspective of what you're doing. So that's the value of having a guest with us tonight, and I'll introduce him when that time comes. But he's going to be here to talk to us about a report that the General Assembly did ask for, and so it's only right that report, and the report has been made public, it's online, so anybody who wants to read it can. But if there are questions about that report, that's what we're going to be concerned with tonight, questions about that particular report. And I'm going to do my best to make sure that all voices are heard, but that we stay on that particular report, because that's what helps us at the end of the day make a decision that we have to as to whether or not to go forward. It's complicated, but it's better to have more information than not. So that's the way we will run the meeting. We do have some witnesses who are signed up on the phone to testify, and I do ask all witnesses please to observe what we're trying to do. We're not in-house just yet. We have people on the phone that will be waiting, but we ask you to keep your comments really brief, but to the point. The witnesses are here to say they support this or not support that, and that's really what we need. This bill we've heard numerous times, and there's a lot of information on the website about it, so it's not like this is new. In fact, we heard it last year at some point. So, having said that, the first thing I'd like to do is we've got 3 bills, as I say, that we've heard before, and we'd like to vote those bills out to the floor. And the first one is Bill 5696 by McEntee, and that authorizes South Kingston to issue up to $85 million in bonds for school improvements, subject to local voter approval. As I say, we've heard that before, but Mr. Clerk, could you call the roll, please, to make a determination whether we send it to the floor
Chairman
or
Abney,
not? Yes.
Vice Chair Slater,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mazakowski,
Yes.
Representative Amore,
Yes.
Representative Baginski,
Yes.
Representative Barros,
Yes.
Representative Diaz.
Yes.
Representative Edwards,
Yes.
Representative Hull,
Yes.
Representative Nardone, Representative O'Brien, Representative Quattrucci, Representative Ruggiero,
Yes.
Representative Tabone,
Yes.
Representative Vella-Wilkinson, and that's it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to vote in the affirmative in my ex officio capacity, please.
Yes, please.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, great. So then that bill 5696 will go to the floor for debate and/or discussion to determine passage. The next bill is Senate Bill 374 by Senator Sanowski, and that's identical to the bill that we just sent to the floor. It authorizes South Kingston to issue up to $85 million in bonds for school improvements subject to local voter approval. Could you read the roll on that, please, sir?
Chairman Abney,
Yes?
Vice Chair Slater,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mazakowski,
Yes.
Representative Moore,
Yes.
Representative Baginski,
Yes.
Representative Barros,
Yes.
Representative Diaz, Representative Edwards,
Yes.
Representative Hull,
Yes.
Representative Nardone, Representative O'Brien, Representative Quattrucci, Representative Ruggiero,
Yes.
Representative Tabone, Representative Vella-Wilkinson. Is that yes? Is she here?
No.
She's there.
Leader Filippi?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you have any votes, leader, from anyone else that, by virtue of your position, that may have wanted it?
Not
Yes.
to my knowledge.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So then Senate Bill 374 will go to the floor. The next bill is Senate Bill 224, and that is by Senator Goodwin. That is identical to Bill 5534 that I believe we passed on the floor already. It's by Chairwoman, no, I'm sorry, it's identical to Chairwoman Diaz's bill. And it authorizes Providence to issue up to $140 million in school bonds. For the audience to know, when a bill is passed in the House and/or the Senate, usually there's a companion bill that goes to either one of the two houses, and that's what we're doing some of tonight. So, Mr. Clerk, would you please read the roll?
Chairman Abney,
Yes?
Vice Chair Slater,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mazakowski,
Yes.
Representative Moore,
Yes.
Representative Baginski,
Yes.
Representative Barros,
Yes.
Representative Diaz,
Yes.
Representative Edwards,
Yes.
Representative Hull,
Yes.
Representative Nardone, Representative O'Brien, Representative Quattrucci, Representative Ruggiero,
Yes.
Representative Tabone,
Yes.
Representative Vella-Wilkinson,
Yes.
and Representative Leader Filippi.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That means that Senate Bill 224 will go to the floor for discussion and/or voting out. So now I have some bills. Before we get started, we have to hold all bills for further study, and we'll have to have a roll call vote on each one of those. But what we'll do now is it's Bill 6123 by Rep. Casimiro. And I think, Ms. Clerk, we do have to have a roll call vote on each of these we're holding for further study? Okay, good. Right. Okay, would you call it on the first bill then? I'm sorry. Yeah.
All bills for further study? Second.
So a motion's been,
Second.
thank you. A motion has been moved and second that we'll hold all bills for further study. Mr. Clerk, would you please read the roll?
Chairman Abney,
Yes.
Vice Chair Slater,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mazakowski, Representative Moore,
Yes.
Representative Baginski,
Yes.
Representative Barros,
Yes.
Representative Diaz, Representative Edwards,
Yes.
Representative Hull,
Yes.
Representative Nardone, Representative O'Brien, Representative Quattrucci, Representative Ruggiero,
Yes.
Representative Tabone,
Yes.
Representative Vella-Wilkinson,
Yes.
and Leader Filippi.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Out of an abundance of caution, the first three bills that we sent to the floor, I think I forgot to have those bills seconded and introduced. So Vice Chair Slater moves that those bills will go to the floor.
Second.
Make a motion that Bill number 5696, Senate Bill number 224, and the companion Senate Bill 374 to 5696 we sent to the floor.
And I think I heard a second by Rep. Ruggiero. Okay, great. So it's been moved and second that those three bills go to the floor. Now, do we need a roll call vote on that too?
No.
I don't think that we do. Okay. Yeah. So we just want to make sure that structurally we were doing the things in the right way. Okay, I appreciate that. So now what we're going to do is move into, we have 2, 3 other bills, but the first bill that we will hear is Bill 6123 by Representative Casimiro. Are you out there? All right, before we get to Rep. Casimiro and her bill, we do have to do a roll call vote on those 3 bills. I just want to make sure now, clerk, is it a roll call vote on each one or just the 3?
We already did the vote on the bills. We're doing the vote on the first and second? Is that what we're doing?
Well, we never made.
We didn't make the motion, we did the vote.
Yeah.
We'll just take the vote.
Okay, let's do it again.
I think if
Why
you
not?
take the roll for all of them, we'll be in good stead.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Chairman Abney?
Yes.
Vice Chair Slater?
Yes.
Vice Chair Mazakowski?
Yes.
Representative Amore?
Yes.
Representative Baginski?
Yes.
Representative Barros?
Yes.
Representative Diaz?
Yes.
Representative Edwards?
Yes.
Representative Hull?
Yes.
Representative Nardone? Representative O'Brien? Representative Quattrucci? Representative Ruggiero?
Yes.
Representative Tabone?
Yes.
Representative Vella-Wilkinson?
Yes.
Leader Filippi?
Yes.
Okay, I think technically we're now okay. I think.
We were okay before.
We want to make sure. In this new world of video and the whole thing, want to make sure we're safe. Okay, thank all of you for your patience very much. So now we have moved and second the other bills that we're going to hear tonight. So we're good. The first bill up would be a bill 6123 by Representative Casimiro, and it authorizes the Quantum Development Corporation to borrow up to $1 million for operational purposes. And I think that we have one witness that we need to dial up on this particular bill. Yeah, this is Bill 6123, and we have one witness that is up on the bill to explain. Yeah. We'll have this witness on the line in just one moment. Okay, thank you, Mr. King. I know you're there. Could you give us your brief comments, please?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Adney and members of the committee. My name is Stephen King, and I'm the Managing Director of the Quantum Development Corporation. I want to begin by thanking both Representative Craven and Casimiro for introducing this bill to support the QDC. Quantum is a hub for commerce here in North Kingstown, but also provides employment opportunities for all Rhode Islanders. There are currently over 12,000 jobs at over 200 companies in the business park. The success of Quantum is directly attributed to the support of this committee and led by Chairman Adney, as well as the entire General Assembly. Thank you for your support over the last few years. It's been a team effort in the best sense of the phrase. In fact, Quantum is a window into what's possible in Rhode Island with collaboration and sound policy making. As you know, the QDC does not receive an allocation from the general fund for its $14 million of operation expenses. Instead, it relies on revenues from tenant rental payments, payments in utility services, and port fees. This bill would provide the authorization needed for QDC to obtain a revolving line of credit that will add an important tool to our management toolbox. This bill is modeled after legislation that financed a successful recently completing dredging project at the Port of Davisville. using only Quonset Development Corporation assets and revenue streams that would grant the QDC the power to establish and access a $1 million line of credit. There will be no fiscal impact to the state of Rhode Island. Specifically, this bill will assure continuity of cash flow for operations. The line of credit authorization by this bill will provide a short-term bridge between timing of receipts and expenditures as necessary. Our need to manage cash flow has been challenged with transfer payments or scoops over the years, and we do not have a restricted reserve account for this purpose. It will also provide a backstop for critical services. The QDC provides critical public services, including water supply, wastewater treatment, public works, railroad access, and port facilities. Currently, we do not have a financial backstop to respond to unplanned equipment failures or service interruptions. This line of credit will provide a necessary tool to conduct emergency repairs. It will also provide ability to manage federal grants. The QDC has been fortunate to be recipient of many federal grants for infrastructure upgrades through the great work of our congressional delegation. These grants are typically structured as reimbursements with a local match. This line of credit will provide a tool to allow us to make payments in advance of reimbursements and cover a local match requirement if needed. It will also provide a short-term cash cushion for large projects. QDC executes many large capital projects with many potential unforeseen conditions. This line of credit will provide protection against unfunded surprises. So in summary, this measure costs the general fund nothing, positions Quonset to continue its momentum and create more jobs, and this line of credit is cash flow insurance in the event of a match for a grant, an infrastructure need, or an emergency occurrence. We added nearly 300 jobs to the Quonset last year despite of the ongoing pandemic, and this bill will allow us to keep our momentum going. I urge passage, and I thank you for this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. King. I appreciate the good job that you guys do out at Quonset. Are there any questions of Mr. King? Representative Barros, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. King, you mentioned some scoops over the years. So how much money over the last few years have you've been scooped?
Several $1 million, Representative.
Okay, last year or the year before?
Over the last 4 years, probably.
Okay, so you're saying over the last 4 years, $2 million?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. King.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from anyone on the screen or in the audience for Mr. King? Thank you, Mr. King. We always appreciate, as I say, what you guys do out there at Quonset. Your whole team is great. If there are no further questions, then that would end the hearing on Bill 6123. Okay, the next bill that we will hear will be Bill 6024 by Chairman Shanley, and it's at the request of the judiciary. I don't think that he's here, but I do believe we have on the line Julie Hamill from Judiciary who will present and explain the bill. She should be on the line in just a second. Okay, Julie, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate you putting this bill into play for us. This is Chairman Abney, so please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Abney and members of the Finance Committee. My name is Julie Hamill. I am General Counsel to the Rhode Island Supreme Court, and I appreciate the opportunity to briefly address the committee relative to House Bill 6024, which was introduced at the request of the judiciary. House Bill 6024 seeks to amend General Laws Section 35427, which pertains to indirect cost recoveries on restricted receipt accounts maintained by state agencies. The statute provides that 10% of all cash receipts held in restricted receipt accounts be turned over to the general fund. The statute does contain exceptions as well as an itemized list of restricted receipt accounts which are not subject to the 10% indirect cost recovery. We are asking that 4 of the judiciary's restricted receipt accounts be added to the list of exempt accounts. The accounts in issue are the Supreme Court's indirect cost recovery account, the Victims' Rights Information account, the Rhode Island Supreme Court disciplinary account, and the small claims mediation account. As to the first account, the indirect cost recovery account, this account has been treated as exempt from the 10% indirect cost recovery by DOA because it falls squarely in category number 2 of the statute, insofar as the funds in that account consist of assessments of indirect cost recovery rates on federal grant funds. So practically speaking, DOA has actually been treating that particular account as exempt. The second, third, and fourth accounts hold funds that are deposited in accordance with Rhode Island court orders. And as such, we submit that they should be entitled to exempt status. I would further note that funds held in these 3 accounts have been insufficient to cover the expenses each account was set up to pay for, which has required an infusion of cash from the judiciary's general operating budget to meet those needs. Removing the 10% reduction would assist in maintaining these accounts at an appropriate level. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. I thank you for your time, and I would also like to especially thank the sponsors of this bill, Representatives Shanley, Craven, and Barros, for introducing this bill on the judiciary's behalf.
Thank you, Ms. Hamill. Are there any questions from the panel for the judiciary, Ms. Hamill?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, okay, go ahead. I was trying to look and see where you are.
Representative Hull.
Oh, okay, Representative Hall. Okay, I see you now. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, if the first account is being treated correctly and the other 3 are not being, if you fall short, will you not ask the General Assembly for more money to make yourself solvent?
Yes, I mean, right now we cover those shortfalls with other monies from our operating budget, but that's not the intent of the of what those accounts were set up for.
Well, then please explain a little further for me, because if we're not asking, whatever you don't use does not go back to the general fund, and whatever you need comes from the general fund, I'm losing you somewhere.
Well, we have a budget, obviously, that covers our operating expenses, and these specific accounts have restricted purposes. Okay, so for example, the disciplinary counsel account is supported by funds that are paid by attorneys who register to maintain their license with the Supreme Court, and the funds that we receive in that restricted receipt account pay for the Office of Disciplinary Counsel, the staff, and any other types of expenses. If that account doesn't cover the expenses, we have to take money from other areas of the judiciary's budget. And coming up to the General Assembly for a supplemental budget is an option, but it's not something that we want to have to rely on. So we're just trying to shore up these particular accounts so that they don't get spooked, to quote the prior conversation you had of that 10%.
The only reason why I ask it, I'm not too concerned about the scoops, because that is the process of government and making sure that we contend with its monies. What I have trouble with is these accounts that stay out there, and there's no accountability for these accounts if they go over what they were intended to do, because they're in restricted accounts that are governed by a body that is not governed by the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm fearful of.
I understand. And as I said, these accounts have a very specific purpose, and that is what the funds are used for. And we have the opposite problem. We're not dealing with a surplus of monies in these accounts. We're actually dealing with a shortfall. So, I would just ask this honorable committee to consider that when considering this bill. And I thank you. Your questions are well taken.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You are quite welcome, Chairman Hull. Are there any other questions for the judiciary from the panel? Okay, if not, thank you very much for the information. And that will end the hearing on Bill 6024. The next bill that we will hear will be Bill 5223. Now, that is the bill that enables the Lottery Division to enter into contract extension with IGT and with Twin River. And what we have tonight is a gentleman who was responsible for help putting that together, Sebastian Sinclair of Christensen Capital Advisors. And he's here to answer questions that are based upon the report that was given to the General Assembly. At some point last year, we got this report. And everyone should have it. It should have been read by everyone, but the discussion tonight will be about this particular report. As I said before, we've had numerous hearings on this bill, and that is important. But at some point in time, we want to make sure that the questions that have to do with this particular report are answered. So he will not make a presentation, but I think I'm looking at him now. Sinclair, I know that you're there, and if anybody on the panel has any questions, Mr. Sinclair, this is the time to try to get some explanation of what you're doing, but it's got to be based upon what they put here. Okay? So are there any questions from anybody on the panel for Mr. Sebastian Sinclair? Leader Philippe, he's so graciously volunteering.
Thank you, but I also waited to see if anybody else wanted to go first. Mr. Sinclair.
I didn't want to stop. Did you just raise your hand?
I'll demur.
Okay.
I'll probably have multiple rounds too, so.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I'll start. Thank you, Representative Beginski. And thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Sinclair, for joining us today. Can you go into some detail about the report as it relates to the leasing relationship? I know, quoted throughout the report, it speaks to whether it's in the state's financial interest or not to enter into a leasing relationship for the video lottery terminals as opposed to purchasing them itself. And I just want to understand the analysis and why you made the conclusions you did, please, to start. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, because I had, first off, I need to clarify that. And maybe we should have been clearer in the report. It was, and I guess it depends upon how it's structured. It was not my intention, and I know we didn't specifically state that the state should purchase machines, because that opens up a whole another can of worms. What we were referring to, and every time we talked about this, leasing versus buying, and again, let me back up. This has to be put in some type of context. We were given which is described in the first page of our report, a list of tasks, things to look at, and it revolved around the central system, the VLTs, instant tickets, online sales, but primarily what was asked of us is, what do other states do, and how much do they pay for these types of services? And so when we went through that, part of what we described, as you correctly mentioned, the vast majority of machines are owned rather than leased. And we went through the economics behind that. Now, also, but every time we mentioned that, we also described the situation in Maryland. That was meant as a cautionary tale, not an instruction manual. Now, I mean, you could say that the state technically owns the machines now, they're just choosing to lease them. And the reason it's very important that I bring this up, it's not, my concern would be, and I think it's probably behind Mr. Crisafulli's reaction to that idea, is it's you have to make a distinction between owning and purchasing. I don't have a problem so much with the idea of ownership, but what I do have a problem with, and I think what you and the state of Rhode Island should have a problem with, is if what machines are being placed on the floor in Tiverton, Rhode Island, is determined by a bureaucrat in Providence. I don't think that's a recipe for success. Now, that said, I guess it depends upon how you structure it. as Mr. Crisafulli rightly pointed out, in his view and mine, that would lead to a degradation of performance. Now, if there was some way you could structure that arrangement in such a way, like, for instance, Kansas and Maryland, they are the gaming operators, or in the case of Kansas, gaming managers, are purchasing the machines on behalf of the state. They have the same, when I say they, I mean Kansas and Maryland, have the same constitutional restriction that you have in Rhode Island, that these facilities have to be owned and operated by the lottery. Now, what they've done, and again, so the case of Maryland, where they were purchasing machines, it turned out to be more expensive than they thought it would be, was harder. The operators were unhappy because they weren't able to get the titles that they wanted, particularly from smaller suppliers like an Aristocrat or an Electronic. So, I have to start with a warning that if you were to go down that road, you have to be very careful in how you structure it so that it doesn't impede the performance of your licensees, agents, operators, whatever you like to call them. That said, as you may recall, the impetus behind the General Assembly issuing the RFP that we eventually won and were hired to do the report was the hearings in September and October of last fall, where Twin River and IGT were, well, I guess I should say, Twin River in particular was describing some of the reasons why they felt that they were uncompetitive. And those reasons were the machines are old, there are too many IGT machines versus Science Game, Atronic, some of these other suppliers. And again, it comes down to, who's in control of what's on the field. And it's my firm opinion that of your three partners, the state, IGT, and Twin River Valley, the person best situated to make those decisions is Twin River Valley. And I can't emphasize that enough. Now, that said, another one of the complaints was that, and it's a very legitimate one, that these 10-year-old machines were, the idea that you would pay 7% for them is inefficient, and it's true. Those machines, let's say Draw Poker IGT's Draw Poker was the example that was used. Very popular game. There's probably 5 of them on every casino in this country, but from an economic point of view, it's crazy to pay 7% of your revenues for a machine that you could buy for probably $7,000 or $8,000 in the secondary market. Does that make sense? So there are inefficiencies built into the leasing system, particularly as you get into older machines. Now, that said, Mr. Crisafulli's comments on Tuesday, some of them, were appropriate. That, it's not as simple, there's if you are to go down this road, there's more to it than that. He disputed that the price, I dispute that. First of all, the average would not be $25K unless you were about $25,000 per machine, clarify, unless you were buying all the machines, and I doubt it would be that high anyway. Some machines are over $25,000, but the vast majority are in that 15 to 25 range that we described. And your casino exists of a mix of those machines. Some of the more expensive machines, some of the less expensive machines. And if this were to happen, the 5,400 machines that are current, or 5,300, sorry if I don't have that quite right, machines that are currently in place in Rhode Island are not new. They're not all new machines. But he is correct in that, then if you weren't to price this out, so to speak, you would have to include the price of financing. He mentioned inflation. Yes, today I would say, yeah, that's probably a legitimate inclusion, but it wouldn't have been in January of last year when this report was written, because inflation had been non-existent for the past 10 years, almost non-existent, 1.5%. But, we've had $6 trillion of economic stimulus, so inflation over the next 10, 20 years is probably not a bad assumption. Premium games, he's right. In order to attract customers, you would have to offer premium games like Fortune that can only be placed on the floor under participation agreements. So it would never be 100% of machines. It would be 95 to 90%. And there were some other items that he mentioned, game conversions. And I would agree, that game conversions, replacement, what the depreciation cycle is. So there are other costs involved in that. So that said, it would have to be very carefully done if that's the path that Rhode Island chooses to go down.
Now, if carefully done, if a system could be set up that makes sure that the right machines are being bought, the right investments are made, generally what you've seen around the country, if that system is set up, does the operator realize an economic benefit from going with the purchase system rather than the leasing system?
Yes.
And I appreciate that. And next in your report, we talk about replacement rates and how a leasing system could work. And you really kind of, I don't use the word harp, but we focused on 10%. You focused on 10% in your report, basically saying in order for a leasing relationship to work, there has to be a replacement cycle of approximately 10% of the machines per year. The legislation we're considering only replaces 6% per year, and I'm wondering if you could just talk about why that is and kind of delve into your conclusions a little more, please.
Sure. It's actually it's replacing of 6 and conversion of 2, which in essence, a conversion is a cheaper type of replacement. You're changing the game, you're changing the signage, so forth. So it's actually 8%, as you go through. Now you're right, and as we mentioned in the report, all across this country there are slot managers that manage slot floors on casinos, and their goal every year, and not every, I shouldn't say not every slot manager, but in general, they look to replace about 10% of machines annually. But also, as I mentioned in the report, that's their goal. They seldom reach it for various reasons. It usually ends up being around 8%. Now, in terms of what we were talking about in the report, a good example or analogy would be leasing a vehicle versus owning a vehicle. The benefit of leasing versus owning is that you get a new vehicle every 3 years. The downside is that you're always making a payment. It's not that different for slot machines. So what I meant by that was that, in casinos across this country are replacing 8% of their floor per year. If you are in a leasing agreement, in order to, I think you said if it works, I would characterize it as in order to fully achieve the benefits of a leasing arrangement, that replacement rate could and should be higher. Is that clear?
Yes, and a minimum 10 or 10 is the mean. What should it be? I know every situation is different, but if you were advising a client,
it really depends upon the market, and it's going to depend upon what Plainridge does and what Encore does and what MGM Springfield does. At the end of the day, it's the customers who should be, and often do with how they spend their dollars, deciding what products are available on the slot floor. So it's not a hard and fast number. These guidelines rather than rules, I guess, would be a way to put it.
But so just so I understand, but generally you'd like to see 10% of the floor replaced in a leasing relationship per year.
If I was leasing machines, if it was my casinos and I was leasing machines, yes, I would say yes. I would want 10% of the floor replaced. raised.
And that's the floor.
For some reason, unless, like Plain Ridge or Encore, I've fallen down on the job and I don't need to, then maybe not.
But in a highly competitive marketplace, you think 10% is the floor, it's the minimum?
If I was leasing machines, yes.
Okay, thank you. I have another topic. I'll defer to my colleagues and then come back if I could, please, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, what I'm going to try to do is get everybody, and I see Rep. Baginski has a question, and then Rep. Tabone has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is not about the lease or own debate. If someone has a question about that, should we stay here? Or should we move on?
It has to do with what's in his report
No, I
tonight.
understand that, but
okay.
I don't have a question to follow
Okay,
up on Leader
that's
Philippe
all right. Go ahead and
about
ask your
leasing
question,
and owning.
yeah.
Okay, so, Mr. Sinclair, my question for you is about the economic development portion of this agreement. It's mentioned once, very briefly, on page 12 of your report. You note that Rhode Island is the only state to have a lottery contract tied to economic development. And I really didn't see any other mentions of it throughout the report. When we were here last, Mr. Crisafulli made some compelling arguments about how the hotel expansion and how the expansion of Bally's would benefit the state of Rhode Island in other ways. And I'm wondering if you'd like to just say a few words about that and how it might impact your impression of this agreement.
Yes, absolutely. We didn't mention it for a specific reason, and you could go, what we were asked to look at was described in the RFP, and the economic development aspect of this proposal was not included in that. We were specifically asked to look at the gaming portion and what other states are doing. Now, so that's why it's not in there. It was not part of our job description. That was, this report should obviously be read in conjunction with, if I remember right, it was Paul Dion and the team at the Department of Revenue that went through the benefits and the taxes and the economic impacts of the development deal. So that's why it's not included in our report. It wasn't part of our job. Now, for the second part of your question regarding the expansion at Twin River and how that would impact Twin River's gaming revenues, that came after. Now, if that had happened before, we probably would have to consider it, because he is right. If you make $100 million investment in Twin River, it's going to have a positive benefit on gaming revenues.
So can I put you on the spot for just a second? And can I ask you to maybe offer more of an opinion? I draw the conclusion from your report that you seem to think the state is overpaying here slightly. Would you, knowing what you know now about the economic development incentives, would you alter that opinion? Is that unfair to ask?
Well, I'd have to revisit. I guess it's not unfair. It's not really my wheelhouse. We are consultants to the gaming industry and to governments regarding lotteries and casinos and pairing rituals. But we do economic impact analysis as well. I would prefer not to, for the simple reason that all you have to do is compare the two things side by side. You're right. We did conclude that the Rhode Island lottery is varies by category, whether it's instant or central system or the VLTs, is slightly overpaying. Now, if you look at that in conjunction with the economic development proposals, it's just a matter of what's the balance between those two.
Thank you.
And I just couldn't tell you, I couldn't tell you what the tax revenue is going to be from, 1,100 jobs. I could, but that would involve another study.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rep. Tabone, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I find it curious that on the 10% that you suggest, which is, it would make more sense, it makes sense to me that you would want to have a higher grade of exchanges if things aren't moving in the direction that you want. And the 5%, which was what was chosen by that venture, if they're in the business of making money and we benefit from that, but the more that they make, the better that they do, why do you think they would choose a number that's not, it's half of what you're suggesting?
I'm not sure I understand the question. What do you mean by half of what I'm suggesting?
Well, you suggested that 10% would probably be a better rate of exchange at the end of the year if those machines aren't yielding the expected revenues. Am I correct?
Yeah. Okay, yes.
Okay, and they chose 5. Are you suggesting they're being frugal, cheap, or if they're in the business of making money, they chose a number that they felt that would give them the space to be able to move? I mean, I think 5% is roughly 20% of the 5%. Wait, let me see. So every 1,000 machines is roughly 20%. So it'd be about 250 machines. You're suggesting maybe 500 machines?
In terms of replacement and/or conversions?
Yes.
Yeah, and again, I would emphasize these are guidelines. I mean, if the machines are performing well and don't need to be replaced, then by all means, keep them on board. But again, it all comes back to, this benefit from the perspective of the lessor, the benefits of leasing versus owning. So, for example, let's take a machine, any machine, draw poker, IGT's draw poker. If that machine is underperforming, slightly underperforming, and you own the machine, you might keep it because then you have to go out and buy another. But if you're leasing the machine, you would definitely replace it because there's no additional cost to you. And it comes down to this benefit of leasing versus ownership. And so again, I would come back to, these are guidelines, not rules. I'm not saying, that all the machines on the floor in Rhode Island, 10% of them need to be changed every year in order for this property to succeed. That's not what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, I understand that. I'm just saying that clearly there's, you do this for a living, you study these things, and then you make your report. The gaming industry, it's, as I've spoken to some of the people in the business, this is not about saving children, it's about making money. And if they're in the business of making money, they're going to also do their due diligence prior to acquiring a machine to lessen the need for exchanges, because, that lapse, or just, by the time they realize it, they've lost a ton of money. And so I'm interested in regards to the lease aspect of it. When they lease, the companies that own the machines, they usually also get a premium, right? A 5 or 7% premium?
Depends upon the game.
Depends on the game. Okay. Would that be an incentive for them to lease rather than sell? And and what benefits us more in regards to, because this all comes down to that venture that they're doing, right?
Okay.
All right. Maybe I have to do some hooked on phonics here. All right. So
Could you reference in the report what you're talking about so that he will be able to?
Well, it's based on what he was talking about, and basically what I'm referring to is we're talking about. We know that there's an offer right now about them doing a venture, a joint venture.
Correct.
That would be buying it. So therefore, the state wouldn't be owning it. The venture would be owning it. And they are suggesting that they could do a 5% exchange rate, which would be about 250 machines a year, that they believe that is roughly the average. Now, they've been in this business for a long time here in Rhode Island, and that's what the number that they came up with.
Okay, is that something, sir, that you can answer Or is that something you would have to guess on?
Yeah, well, now that I think, it's actually 6%, not 5. I
Okay.
think that's where some of my, it's, again, remember, it's 6% replacement, 2% conversion, for a total of 8. Now, I think the point you're trying to make is that Twin River wants to make money and they know their business, and this is, so why isn't this okay? Is that a adequate paraphrase?
If they're in the business of making money, then, and they came up with this number, they didn't come up with 2%, they didn't come up with 10%, they came up with that 5 or 6%, which to me indicates that they've studied the issue. The only other thing is that they're being cheap, and so that's what I'm trying to figure out based on your report.
Okay, I think I understand it now. So for the first part of your question, I would agree. They're in the business to make money, and they know their business better than I do. They're doing it on a day-to-day basis. So again, I would come back. Then it comes. I guess you have to take a step back from that in terms of it's the state that's not in control. It's jointly of this replacement or cycle. So it comes down to what is the best benefit for the state. I guess the short answer is, the only thing I can say is I slightly disagree. Again, if it was me, I would, again, this is a guideline, a benchmark, not a rule, and it's over, a period of 10 years. If I was the one leasing the machines, then I would be looking for, over that long term, something closer to the range of 10%. Because, and actually, let me, I didn't really want to get into stuff like this because it gets pretty deep. But there's also a phenomenon. There's new games being developed all the time. We have industry conferences every month, what we used to before COVID. That is primarily about selling these types of devices, table games, so forth. But one of the phenomenon with machines is that oftentimes when they first hit the floor, it's new and it's hot and everybody plays it. But then 6 months later, the performance tails. And those obviously, that in those situations, it's beneficial to lease those machines, those newer machines, as opposed to buying. So there are a lot of things to consider here, but I would concede the point. If you're saying they're happy with only 8%, why should we care if it's 10? Okay, maybe you're right.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
You're quite welcome. Rep. Barros and Vice Chair Slater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. St. Clair, so why should Rhode Island, I think this is on, right? Why should Rhode Island actually purchase and own the machine when the state doesn't really have any experience in running a lottery?
I agree. I don't I don't think the state should be in the business of purchasing the machines. According to the Constitution and the current law, the state has to own the machine. So there's a distinction between purchasing and ownership. So in short, I agree with you. The state should not be the one in charge of purchasing machines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for being with us tonight. I just had a question. One of my questions was, you look at this, you study this industry. Would you say Rhode Island's relationship is a little bit unique with the casino, with Twin River and Tiverton?
Yes. If you looked at this like on a scale, in terms of the structure of gambling regulation and tax rates and the state's involvement with gaming, it's a spectrum, and one end would be like Nevada, where it's essentially everything is, the state just has regulatory control. You know, the casinos have individual monitoring systems. The state has gaming agents there on the floor to regulate, you know, not own. And if you have that scale, Rhode Island is on the very far end. They are, in terms of government control of gaming, that they're the end of the scale. Right next to them is Delaware. Down here is Maryland. And then there's Kansas. And you can sort of move through that scale. So yes, Rhode Island is unique.
So for example, like Rhode Island, the VLTs, we have 60%. Do you know of anywhere else where we have that, anywhere else where they have that sort of arrangement of 60% of the VLT revenue? Or is there anywhere even in New England?
Yeah, well, no. It's close. It's actually, it's not 60%.
No.
It's 59 or something. And actually, the way it works out, because the state gets paid last because they control the funds. And there's actually even a formula in there that involves the number of machines. So actually, the state share is going to go down. Well, if the number of machines continue to increase, the state share is going to go down. So I just want to clarify that. It's roughly 60%. No, the closest would be, Maryland used to be close at like 57, but when they allowed, or not allowed, asked their operators to take over the purchasing and or leasing, whatever they choose to do, of machines, they gave them additional points. So it's now 40-something, 47, 48, 49. My home state, Maine, is 52, I think. But no, again, Rhode Island is the tip of that scale.
And then just getting back, I was going to ask this question before, but Representative Baginski asked about the economic piece. I was just wondering, in your report, and I guess you might have answered this already, is the 1,100 jobs that they, so I guess that wasn't part of the RFP. Is that correct, or?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rep. Vella-Wilkinson, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a question with regards to Intralot. I was wondering if Intralot is actually an online systems provider for Rhode Island. I noticed that in your report you say that they are a systems provider for 11 states, and I was wondering if Rhode Island is one of them.
No, IGT is your systems provider. Or GTEC.
Okay. Then I'm a little bit confused as to why they were included in this report. Is it just as a contrast to what GTEC has been doing?
Yeah, actually, it's a good question. No, and it was included as part of the RFP was for us to give you guys a sense of who the other players are out there that provide these services and some background on them. Because again, as you may recall, back in those hearings in the fall of 2019, there were a lot of accusations going back and forth about, you know, who's a better provider and so forth. So the reason that's in our report is, you know, if the state decided to put this out to bid, who are the other suppliers that can provide these types of services?
So we don't do business at any level with Intralot. Is that correct?
That's to my knowledge.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're quite welcome. Rep. Nardone, please.
Yes, Mr. St. Clair, I'm looking at page 63 on this report, and you say that you don't advocate for 20-year contracts just based on the technological advances. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? And the other thing I would like to know is that the only reason why you don't advocate for 20-year contracts?
No, it's not the only reason. It's a big part of the reason. And actually, thank you for this question because it's a good opportunity for me to clarify that. Technology, you know, it's an important consideration that because typically what happens in most states when you enter into a contract with a lottery provider, be it 5 years or 10 years, or whatever, your system isn't replaced until that contract is renewed, either with a new supplier or with your existing supplier. So that's the technology aspect of it. The other aspect is, and it doesn't happen often, but unless someone violates the terms of your contract, you can be stuck with a lottery supplier that you are very unhappy with, and you don't have the ability, again, unless they violate some specific terms of the contract that allows you to get out of it, you're stuck with it. So, and this is actually a good segue into one of the comments made by IGT, that this is really a 10-year and a 10-year contract, or two 10-year contracts. And they talked about, Florida just entered into a 10-year contract with a 3-year extension. North Carolina did a 10-year contract with a 5-year extension. As we state in our report, that's fine. Though, as a matter of fact, we've recommended those things. And I would also add, I know this has come up a lot in the press and so forth. This is not a revelatory statement, this 10-year contract. We do this type of work, and we advise lotteries on new contracts. Other companies, individuals do this as well. And I have, obviously, we can't do all of them, but I haven't read every report, but I've read several of them. And every other report done, not just done by us, every other consultant that does this type of business, I've never seen one that recommended anything over a 10-year contract.
Okay, Rep. Nardone again.
Yeah, so just so I'm clear, so you wouldn't advocate for a 20-year contract? Did I got you clear?
Whoops. Here's the thing. It's almost, the analogy I would describe would be like if your son or someone that you knew or cared to you came to you and said they wanted to buy a new vehicle, and they wanted to finance that vehicle for 10 years. I think I don't. Probably everyone knows that any financial manager would tell you that's a bad idea because it depreciates so quickly. So that what I'm trying to get at is that it's almost like one of these, again, another one of these guidelines. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule. I didn't put that. I put that statement in there because it's true, and I think it's important for you guys to understand that we have, consulted with these other lotteries, and we have never recommended more than a 10-year contract. However, again, and it comes back to what we were not asked to examine. Tied to that is the economic development deal. So obviously, if you go back to IGT and say, no, we want a 10-year contract, well, they're going to say, no, we're not going to pay you $25 million. Those 1,100 jobs they're not going to commit to a 20-year commitment for a 10-year contract. I mean, there are other considerations. Again, I viewed our job as to convey to you what are the best practices that other states use for these types of services. Does that help?
Just one more follow-up. So they may not do that, but somebody else may do that, may come in and provide those jobs and whatnot with a 10-year contract.
Not 1,100, and move their headquarters. Maybe 50 jobs, 100 jobs. Well, I shouldn't say no. I don't really know. I would be very surprised if Scientific Games was to move their headquarters to Providence and support 1,100 jobs. I think that's what happened.
Thank you very much. Rep. Baginski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sinclair, I just want to put some of this comparison into context. You're talking and referencing other state contracts. Can I ask how many other state lotteries have engaged you for your consulting services on similar topics over the last few years?
In the range of 5 to 10.
Thank you.
Thank you. Returner Leader Philippe, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Sinclair. Getting back to Representative Nardone's question on the 20-year contract, I think on page 63 you stated, CCA has never recommended to any lotteries we have served that a 20-year contract is a good idea. A 10-year initial contract term with optional extensions has been the standard recommendation from CCA for the last 15 years. In 2020, however, we believe this to be even more urgent. Do you stand by that statement, subject to the provision that you spoke about with economic development?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to move on to the central management system because you spent a lot of time talking about it, and we have since then. Thank you for the information on it. On page 61, you went into what we're doing with our central management system, whether we're overpaying, whether we even need one. And you said, based upon our analysis of comparable jurisdictions, Rhode Island is paying considerably more than its peers for a VLT central monitoring system only covering 2 facilities. We believe, based on our analysis of other CMS fees, that if the system were put out to bid, Rhode Island could expect to pay about 1% of gross gaming revenues, a substantial reduction from the 2.5% contemplated in the contract. And that comes to about a $7 million a year savings between the 1% to the 2.5%. And then last week, Mr. Gendron, I believe, from IGT, had stated that the CMS, the central management system that they have, is the Cadillac, essentially. They do all these things that aren't done in other states. So I would ask you to delve into your analysis a little bit on the central management system and tell us if that analysis in the report still stands strong.
Yes, I would stand by the analysis. I watched the hearing and I'm familiar with Mr. Gendron's comments. I didn't drive down to Rhode Island and dive into their central management system and how, whatever this Cadillac of this future may be. The primary, a central system it's not that complicated. Fine, maybe it is the Cadillac, but the idea of a centralized system is that everything is accounted for in real time at all times. Every machine is hooked to the network. You know every pay in, every payout, every hopper empty. It is a real time monitoring and security system. It has a function. It's not about form, it's about function. Now, that said, Mr. Gendron, I have my notes here. He is correct in that, let's see what he mentioned. He said we did not include, VLT technicians. Apparently IGT provides, technicians that keep the machines running 24/7 service, and he said it was a service that they don't provide in the States. Okay, he's right, we missed that. Spare parts inventory and the paper for the TITA, the ticket in, ticket out. Now, again, that was something that I was unaware of until he brought it up. And if those things add up to $7 million a year, then I can see the point.
Let me ask you this question. So with a typical leasing relationship, your car breaks, you don't have to pay to get it fixed unless you hit something, but you bring it in and they fix it. Typically in other states, when there's a leasing relationships, is the maintenance of those machines, if something breaks, included in the lease price? Because it seems like a lot of these costs in the central management system, just from my layman's perspectives, should be included in a leasing arrangement.
Yeah, well, and it's also weird that it's under the central management system as opposed to the machine lease. Let me caveat this by, this is an issue that I haven't, really dug deep into. But it is my understanding that in most states, that the machine replacement and technical services is included under the leasing fee, not the central management fee. So in the case of Rhode Island, the 7%, not the 2.5%.
Yeah.
Now, there are exceptions to every rule, and I have not looked at every state and what they do, but that is my understanding.
Yeah, it's almost like buying a car, then, someone calling you up to buy a warranty. I mean, leasing a car, and then someone cranking you and saying, would you like to buy a warranty? What's the point of buying a warranty if you are leasing? The lease should cover the day-to-day maintenance and repairs. I'll move on. In your analysis, you spoke about our instant tickets and that we're not up to par. And Mr. Gendron, I believe, responded and said we're not up to par because Massachusetts has such high payouts. And I think your analysis was that by only going with one instant ticket printer, we're leaving a lot of money on the table. And I would just ask you to respond to Mr. Gendron's analysis that we're leaving money on the table because the state has low payouts, not because of anything that IGT is doing or not doing.
Yeah. First, you said a lot. I didn't say a lot because one of my comments to Mr. Gendron's comments is that that's the reason we didn't quantify it. He's right to some extent. One of the reasons why, or possible reasons, because there's no way really from the data that we have for us to know why customers are doing what they're doing. We can look at the spending numbers and we can see how they compare, but it doesn't tell us the why. But I would concede, and we, in fairness, we probably should have brought that up in the report, that the higher payout rates in Massachusetts would certainly be a contributing factor as well. Whether it's predominant, as Mr. Gendron put it, I don't know, and neither does he. Maybe. So and I would also add, this issue of payout rates is also a decision by the lottery. Those are determined by the tickets and the type of products that you sell. Rhode Island has the opportunity to increase its payout rates. In instant tickets, typically, although not always, but typically the way that works is that's higher price point tickets. A $30 ticket has a higher payout rate than a 10% ticket. But again, it always comes down to balance. Is what does the market work? Maybe Rhode Islanders don't want these types of products. I don't believe that's true, but it's possible. But I would say how I would characterize our report is exactly the way that we worded it, and that it's leaving some money on the table. And even though, as Mr. Gendron correctly pointed out, there could be other factors involved. Okay, I can see that. But let's use an analogy. Lotteries are a retail business. They're no longer, Amazon's the largest retailer now, but let's use Walmart as an example. Walmart has, sporting goods. So they have their own brand called Ozark Trail. Then they sell sleeping bags and camping gear and so on and so forth. But Walmart also carries Coleman and other suppliers of outdoor gear. And this is just a very simple precept in retail. Yes, Walmart's making less off when they sell a Coleman sleeping bag, and as opposed to whether they sell a Ozark Trail sleeping bag. But they've made the determination that they're going to sell more in total if they offer both those products. And instant tickets in particular, more so than online games. You walk into a lottery retailer, it's this big display. You see it. There's all the tickets, all laid out, and people pick them by names. And they pick certain game choices. One of the other comments that Mr. Gendron made, and these are all factually true statements, that when Scientific Games had the contract 3 or 4 years ago, the performance was less than what we've done over the last 3 years. And again, it comes down, and this is the reason why we said this in the report. We didn't say that Rhode Island is leaving some money on the table because IGT is their supplier of instant tickets. We said it's because they're the only, we said it's because there's only one supplier. So that doesn't really apply. The same would apply if we were talking about Scientific Games or Pollard Banknote. The idea, and I think it's a very simple one to understand, is that if consumers have more options when they walk into that store as to what they buy for a ticket, it's going to increase sales.
Could I get, you can come on another round, but I think Rep. Ruggiero has a question. She's online. Hi, Rep. Ruggiero. Sorry I didn't see you. I was looking at another screen. Okay, thank you.
No worries, Chairman. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Sinclair, for joining us tonight. I really appreciate your expertise on this. And you're right, this is about economic development and tax revenue for our state. Gambling is our third highest revenue, 10% of the state's general revenues, to be honest with you. I'm curious, on page 61 of your report, you talk about the price evaluation of the upfront $25 million, which isn't really upfront because it is delayed for 2 years. It's $12.5 million 1 year, $12.5 million the next year. In your opinion, because you've done so much work with lotteries across the country, Is this a good deal for the state? Can the state improve this on behalf of the Rhode Island citizens? Again, we're talking a 20-year no-bid contract. I'm just curious what your opinion is.
Are you talking specifically about this upfront payment or overall?
Yes. Yeah, it's an upfront payment that is delayed for 2 years, $12.5 million in 2023 and 2024, the second payment. And it is the same, deal that was done years ago, and it's now currently in this. And you talk about it, as I said, on page 61, you lauded the technical evaluation, but I'm just curious your opinion on that upfront payment.
Okay, well, in my experience in the gaming industry, I've never seen anything like it. It's I don't know of any other lottery supplier that's offered an upfront payment to a lottery. I'm unaware of it. So it would be very hard for me to say that it could be more, since it's the only one I know of that exists.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
You're quite welcome. Okay, Leader Philippe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sinclair, I think it was Mr. Gendron stated at the last hearing that it would be reckless for the state to do a conversion with their current contract expiring in 3 years, that the state at this point is locked into IGT because it's too late to find somebody else. In your advice to other states, have they operated within a different window or within the same window as us and been successful? I mean, that's just something I think we need some clarity on if we can no longer, we're stuck with IGT because it's too late.
I'll go into more detail why, but I think, unfortunately, absent an extension of your current contract, he's probably right. He wasn't right in January 2020, but I do think he's right now. And there are a couple reasons for that. He went through, he said you got to issue an RFI, you've got to issue an RFP, and he went through the various, again, which are accurate in terms of how long that would normally take. I might dispute whether you need an RFI, but I would say that even though, and again, it all starts with this conversion, right? So you always work back from that. So you got to work back from, what is it, July of 2023? If you work backwards, you should always plan for at least a year for the conversion. He's absolutely right about that. Some have been done in 9 months, even in bigger states, but I would not recommend that. You're cutting it, and maybe you'll succeed. You're cutting it, but you're cutting it really fine. And there's a danger that, and it's happened in some jurisdictions, that when you flip the switch, it doesn't work. So I would certainly have a concern with that. The other concern, and I didn't mention in the report because I didn't even think I'd even considered at that time. Well, that's right, I didn't consider at the time because in January of 2020, you had time. The other aspect is how much institutional knowledge there is within the Rhode Island Lottery of actually drafting and of constructing and drafting and issuing these RFPs. Now, I'm sure they probably have employees that have worked in other states, but my guess would be that there's probably not a lot of institutional knowledge there. This isn't a big deal for a state like, Maine or New Hampshire that, just did this 5 years ago. They can pull up their old RFP and just start changing some of the terms. Again, I don't know where the lottery is in sort of this regard, but my concern would be that that's going to, for however long it would take, a state like New Hampshire or Vermont to develop an RFP, make the decision on who's going to win the award. I would have to think that, it's that Rhode Island in particular, because they haven't done this for 40 years, something like that, 30, 40 years, it's going to take them longer. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's not, there is a way out, I guess, but, and that would be a 1-year extension or a 2-year extension of your existing contract. But unfortunately, a lot of time has passed, and it's...
Okay, thank you. I just want to caution us that as we go through, and I want it to be as thorough as possible, we do have another committee that's coming in behind us, so we need to, at some point, start wrapping up because we have about 7 or 8 witnesses that we need to call, so let's just keep that in mind, please. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Leader Philippe.
I mean, unless someone else has a question, I just have a standard question to ask.
Nah, you've got the floor.
Thank you. And just to confirm, Mr. Christensen, when this contract was executed, you signed a statement of no conflict. Do you remember that statement?
Not particularly.
You had no pecuniary interest with Twin River and IGT with any of the parties you're now analyzing, and that hasn't changed?
No.
Okay. And has anyone discussed your testimony tonight with you outside of your organization?
You have. And Sue Stenhouse. But other than that, no.
Since I have, has it been other than emails requesting your presence and asking you to do an analysis on leasing versus buying? Within the past 6 months?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else, before we get to the witnesses, have any other questions that I'm sorry, Rep. Tabone.
Yeah, this should be easy and quick. Just in regards to the work that you've done, first of all, do you think that the size of our state compared to other states and the arrangements that, this particular deal that we're doing, I mean, the fact that we're roughly the size of a large county, does that matter when we compare state to state and the arrangements that we're making?
Yeah, I think so. And we kind of touched on that in the reports. One of the reasons, like, we excluded, even though they fit some of the criteria, a state like Montana or Colorado that may have similar sales, but it's such a wider geography. Because again, so you have to service these retailers. So if you have a bigger geography, you have to cover. And also, it mentioned sparsely populated geography. It definitely has an impact on the economics. And actually, it's an advantage to Rhode Island in that you're small and you're dense. So yes, from an economic perspective, it should be from the perspective of the retailers and maintaining the central system, it should be cheap for a state like that.
Okay. And then secondly, how many states have you dealt with that have 2 global leaders with a presence in it, again, with a state of our size, or because, again, in regards to population, unless we compare ourselves to Delaware, Montana, as you said, their population is spread out pretty much. It's an enormous state. Compared to us, where some of our challenges is the fact that our proximity to 2 major states, such as Massachusetts and Connecticut, hinder us many times in regards to containing people and the different things that we're offering. So with that said, how many have you dealt with things where they're global leaders like Bally's and IGT, and what's the closest deal that you've either worked on or are familiar with in a situation like this?
First, none, I guess. You're restricting it to small states, right?
Well, no, or any state for that matter. I just, we are not known for having Fortune 500 companies other than, CVS and a few others. But in this case, our finances, when you compare our state to a Massachusetts or a California or a Texas, 1,000 jobs for another state, they absorb that and it doesn't move the needle. But for us, it does. And when you take that into consideration on a scale, what do you think about that in regards to, how we're trying to structure this deal and make sure that we don't miss out on some of the things that we work so hard to maintain?
Okay, what's the question?
Mr. Sinclair, I was about to say that was more of a statement than it was a question, and it's not a bad statement, but it is. But if that's something that you can't answer, we need to move on.
All right.
I think he's asking you for an opinion But the only thing I'm interested in, quite honestly, is an opinion about something that was in this particular report. It's not a bad question, but I can tell by the hesitancy if you don't understand. I don't want you guessing.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just not really sure. It's not really my wheelhouse.
I understand. That's why I tried to clarify it so that any statements that you make, they're your professional, statements, but that is based on the report that you gave us. Not that the question that the rebel is asking you isn't a good one, but I just want to remain focused on that so we can get through this.
All right, well, thank you, Chair.
Great. Rep. Barros, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not necessarily a question, but just basically a statement thanking Mr. St. Clair for clarifying a lot of the assumption that perhaps I had, and not having had the opportunity to thoroughly go through the report. But now I understand it's much better than I did in January 2000. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank Rep. Barros for doing my job. I was about to do that, but he beat me to it. No, I really do want to thank you for appearing with us, and I want to thank the leader for bringing you in. It really did help us clarify some of the things that were in the report, and it is so important that we be able to do that, not just for the members of our committee, but for the other members of the House who may be watching this or have to refer to it at some point in time. It's not an easy decision to make, but I do believe that a good discussion and good questions and good clarifications are what we need as we move forward into this. And my final comments are that my whole concern and my whole purpose is to make sure that at the end of the day, the sources of income that we have for the things we have to do in this state, that the decision that's made on them is done in an organized way, in a concise way, and in a way that helps the taxpayers. So thank you so much, sir, for your service in putting that report together and explaining it. Okay. Thank you. So what we're going to do now, we do have witnesses, and as I tell all witnesses, we're going to call you up on the phone, but it's either you're for or against the bill, and please keep it to a couple of minutes or so. I know by looking at some of the names, some of it could go for 2 hours, and I could listen, but we do have another committee that's coming in after us, so that if you would make your answers concise or tell us whether you support or not, we'll do that. And I think the first person up, you got it, is that Mr. Sabatoni? Oh, okay. Could you get him on the line, please? Okay, thanks. Hello, Mr. Sabatoni.
Yes.
How are you this evening?
I am well, Mr. Chairman, and how are you, sir?
Thank you, thank you. Okay, you're on, sir, for your brief comments. I'm sorry we're not able to do it in person, but hopefully next year we'll be able to do so.
Soon enough. I miss coming up there and seeing all your faces. So I appreciate the time, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, to speak in support of this legislation. I've been following this for the last couple of years, and to say I've had the opportunity to work with both of these community how they've conducted themselves in the community as good corporate citizens, both IGT and Bally's, formerly known as Twin River, has been tremendous. And speaking on behalf of the Rhode Island Building and Construction Trades Council and the 10,000 members we represent that have built both of those campuses and have renovated both those campuses, employing hundreds of tradesmen and women for the last couple of decades, as well as the Rhode Island Laborers District Council, I represent over 800 members that work directly in the casinos, both Tiverton and Lincoln, as dealers, and EBS, which is the backup house cleaners, as well as the Players Club. I have to say both of these companies have exceeded commitments and expectations in my close to 20 years in having the pleasure of working with both of them. And I appreciate the diligence that I've been watching and the questions that have been asked. But again, my experience with both of them, and I was actually pleased when they came together. I didn't like to see two corporate firms, global firms that are located here in Rhode Island, kind of combat each other on trying to figure out what was in the best interest of their companies to come together and figure out what's best for them collectively, and then service the state of Rhode Island. I think some of the testimony I just heard from your expert, you might want to pay attention to. and having living in the construction industry and dealing with bids, and sometimes bids you get a number that you might like, but then you also get uncertainty and you get things that you don't expect from time to time. And switching and moving to new vendors is a complicated task. You've got two firms with a track record and a commitment to the state of Rhode Island that has been unsurpassed by quite a few corporate citizens that I could say the same. So for these reasons and many more, I know the additional investments they're going to make up in Lincoln and the thousands of jobs that they already have that are good paying, family sustaining jobs. As for all those reasons, I support this legislation. And again, I appreciate the diligence of the Finance Committee, and I'm just hopeful that you'll find a way to get to yes. They're all great questions, but I don't like what I hear when some people say there's a no-bid contract. These firms have been here with a commitment and a track record to this state. This is a reinvestment on these companies who also have invested in the state of Rhode Island, and it's been a partnership between the state and these two companies. And that's why, wholeheartedly, on behalf of the members I represent, we support this legislation. And I thank you for allowing me to testify tonight, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, and keep up the good work. Okay.
All right, everybody.
Yep, be well. All right. I think we have Mr. Mancini up next. Mr.
Hello.
Greg Mancini, are you on, sir?
Yes. Hello, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I represent Bill Rhode Island. We're a coalition of 4 contractor associations and 17 construction unions. I'm here to support this initiative. It's a $200 million investment in the Rhode Island economy by these good corporate citizens. Significant expansion, 50,000 square foot expansion. Some shovel-ready construction projects that will employ hundreds of local tradesmen and women, and also give a number of business opportunities out to a number of contractors who are locally. Simply put, we can't take any chance. We've got to, make sure that we do all we can to help our economy recover. As it relates to this particular deal, I was listening to your expert, and I thought he did a very thorough job. And I would also suggest to you that no bid contracts are sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not good. I just think as long as the General Assembly does their diligence and it's in the best interest of the taxpayers, I think you should pass it. And it seems like you guys did a great job. It was very thorough. And I can tell you the impact on the union construction industry or the construction industry will be significant. And I wholeheartedly encourage the General Assembly to approve this piece of legislation.
Thank you so much for your testimony. It was very helpful. Okay.
Hopefully it was brief enough.
I was brief enough and concise. I appreciate that, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think we're trying to get John on the line now. John Tassani. John, are you on the line, sir?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me back again. I'm not going to discuss what I had discussed a week ago, but I would implore this committee to take a look at what I do. I am the president of Rhode Island Council on Problem Gambling, and there is no money in the state anywhere for prevention and education. I implore you to put some funding in this piece of legislation so this board that I represent, which includes the Attorney General's office, the lottery, IGT, and a number of others, to put some money in there for funding so we can go on and we can educate and have prevention for people who have issues with gambling.
Thank you very much, John. You do a great job in the organization that you work with, and we'll keep all of that in mind, sir. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
You're welcome. Okay. Thank you to John. And we're trying to get a hold of George. George Nee.
Yes, sir.
Good. Are you on the phone now?
I am.
Okay, great. You're up. I thought I could hear my voice. Did you have your television turned down?
I do.
Okay, good. You're on, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the House Finance Committee. My name is George Nee. I'm the president of the Rhode Island AFL-CIO, and I am here to go on record supporting the legislation that you have before you, dealing with Bally's and the IGT company. You should know, and I'm sure you do, that the labor unions represent hundreds of workers that work up at Twin River, Bally's, whatever the name we're using these days, of good jobs. And what we mean by good jobs is family-sustaining wages, benefits, job security, and an attention to health and safety. This company has expanded over the years and has expanded both their employment in the facility and expanded by building additions and to the facility. And we need this legislation to protect the jobs that are there and, with this proposal, to expand jobs. We need this legislation to protect and expand the state revenue. It's also a chance for our state to be the corporate headquarters of a major U.S. corporation. And from dealing with this from our many different unions with the management, particularly at Bally's, all we can say is it's important for you to know that we see both corporations as good corporate citizens, very responsible, supportive of organizations in the community. And our experience with both of them is that when they make a commitment, they keep their word. And I think that's important. That's an important part of any organization that comes before you for your approval. So thank you very much for your time. And we look forward to hopefully seeing this pass as soon as possible. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your attention to this and for your testimony, for all that you do. We really appreciate that. Okay. Do we have Liz coming up? Hello, Liz Catucci. Are you there?
I'm here, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Hi, how are you this evening?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you, Chairman Abney, and thank you to the committee for giving me this opportunity. I'm very appreciative.
Okay, you're on.
Thank you. My name is Liz Catucci. I'm the president and CEO of the Northern Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce. Our chamber serves 13 different communities in the Northern Rhode Island region, and Lincoln is one of those communities. And I know you have a lot of people testifying tonight, so I will be very brief and just make three very quick points. First, I wanted to touch on what the passage of this legislation could mean to the Northern Rhode Island business community. Twin River plays such a vital role in our region's economy. We stand in support of their efforts to ensure its competitiveness and those that will allow it to expand and improve its delivery of services. This legislation does just that, as it clears the way for an important $100 million construction project that would be right in our backyard. Second, I wanted to touch on the benefits that this region garners from Twin River specifically. Twin River is a significant contributor to this region in a variety of many ways. The revenue it generates, the taxes it pays, the employment opportunities it provides for Blackstone Valley residents, and the spin-off region-wide spending are all very critical to our continued growth. This is, of course, made even more important during this time of the global pandemic, where many, many of our businesses are scaling back and sadly are outright closing. Thirdly, I wanted to touch on the impact of the construction projects in the region, specifically this $100 million expansion at Twin River. For us, we believe it sends a strong signal that there is an economic promise of tomorrow, that there exists confidence that our economy will come back from this health and economic crisis that was brought on by COVID-19, and lastly, that there is a continued commitment to this region and to the state. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I hope I was brief enough.
You were brief and concise enough. I really appreciate that. We got every word you said. Keep up the good work up there in the northern area. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and we appreciate all of you.
Thank you so much. Okay. So that should end the discussion on this particular bill for tonight. We have with us Rep. Casimiro, who was in the building before, so I want to make sure she got a chance to speak on her bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. I know that you spoke to Stephen King earlier tonight regarding House Bill 5220, which is the Quonset Infrastructure Financing Bill. As many of you know, Quonset is a Rhode Island success story. More than 12,000 jobs at over 200 companies. One of every 6 manufacturing jobs in the state are at Quonset. Quonset's record-breaking Port of Davisville is one of the top 10 auto importers in North America. As you know, Quonset receives no funding for operations in the state budget. When it comes to operations, Quonset is self-sufficient. Quonset maintains a world-class infrastructure that supports all those companies and jobs with an annual operating budget of only $12 million. The bill before you is modeled after legislation passed by the Assembly several years ago that financed the successful dredging project at the Port of Davisville. Using only Quonset Development Corporation assets and revenue streams, it would grant that the QDC have the power to establish and access a $1 million line of credit. This costs taxpayers nothing. It costs taxpayers nothing. A line of credit would provide a backstop to urgent short-term cash needs created by emergencies or unexpected expenses. This would also help address issues arising from the scoops that we all experienced during budget season. $2 million in the past few years in scoops. World-class public infrastructure is Quonset's key to success. The line of credit would provide a short-term cash cushion for large projects, again costing the taxpayers nothing. Because of its track record of putting money to work on infrastructure quickly and successfully, QDC receives many federally funded grants. The grants typically require payment to the contractor prior to reimbursement. The line of credit will provide a mechanism to manage those payments and manage cash flow challenges. There is no fiscal impact to the budget on this bill. No fiscal impact. This is the 4th year I'm putting this bill in. QDC's operations are self-supporting, no appropriations for operations in the budget. Any borrowing would be backed by the assets of the QDC itself, as done with legislation that financed the Port of Davisville dredging project. This measure costs the taxpayers nothing. I don't know how many times I can say that. It costs the taxpayers nothing and positions Quonset to continue its momentum to create jobs. The line of credit is a cash flow insurance. In the event a match grant is awarded, infrastructure needs to be upgraded, or an emergency occurs. This bill will put Rhode Islanders to work and support a proven success. So thank you, Chairman Abney.
Thank you so much. The audience should know that this is the 4th year she's put this bill in, and she will never let me live it down.
And it costs the taxpayers nothing.
So you didn't say that the last 3 years, now that makes a difference.
I said it enough for the last 3 years, just tonight.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of the sponsor?
Nothing. Nothing.
He said how much it's going to cost the taxpayers. No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate everything that happens out at Quonset, and trust me, no one likes to go into scoops any worse than we do. But hopefully, if this will help with that, we'll do our best.
And if anyone would like to come down and make a visit to Quonset, it's really an amazing story to see in action. It's Quonset needs their own zip code. Representative Diaz, I'm going to take you up on that. It's really something to see.
Well, no, really, thank you so much. You do a great job, and it is a great industrial area with a lot of things that go on there, yes. And I really appreciate that.
All right.
Rep. Nardone, I believe, has a question right behind you there.
Yes, Rep. Does this cost the taxpayers anything?
I want to go on record as saying it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything.
Well, what I want to go on record is saying, look, I appreciate the work that the committee did tonight. This was not easy. And, doing big things never really is. But you kept your sense of professionalism. You kept your sense of humor. All of that makes a difference in helping us make a decision that's going to affect the lives of 1,050,000 people for a long time. And so I applaud your interest, your insightful questions, your comments, and I'm really, really glad that you guys did well tonight. Rhode Island did well tonight. Thank you so much. If we don't have any other questions, that should end the business of the Finance Committee tonight.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay. We're adjourned.